So thanks for joining another study of Genesis. We're in chapter 38, and this chapter is concerning the children who were fathered by Judah, the son of Jacob. And of course, we know that Jesus is in the line of Judah, so this is an important piece, and kind of tell how all this ties in together. So Judah had gone down to Canaan, and he met an Adullamite friend whose name was Hira. And it doesn't say how, but somehow Judah came to know a certain Canaanite woman by the name of Shua. And through Shua, Judah ends up with 3 children. The name of the first child or son was Er. The second one was Onan, as the generator, if you'd be familiar with those in RVs. And the name of the last one was Shelah. Shelah. And so Judah finds a wife for but it says that he was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. So he died there in Canaan, as was the custom of that time. Would it be that if a husband died, if there was a brother, he would go and take the deceased brother's wife and marry her, and would become his wife, and he would, continue on the line. And of course, that's what Judah instructed Onan to do. Only Onan didn't follow through with his fatherly duties and as the husband's duties, and so he disobeyed the law of God. And as a result, he was slew by God as well. So Tamar is left, who was of course, the wife of the first son, was left without a husband. The third son was too young, and so Judah promised Tamar that when he was old enough, and the third son was Shelah. That when he was old enough that he would become the husband. And so Tamar, said, "Hey, that's going to be a long time. I'm just going to go back to my family." And so she did. And so anyway, there's some time went by, and Tamar found out after a while that the third son had actually grown up. However, Judah didn't follow through with his promise to her, and so I guess he had either forgotten or didn't want to honor it. So what Tamar did was she decided that she would deceive Judah, and what she did is she put a face covering on and a veil as a widow. But anyway, she went and she found Judah. And because of the type of covering she had on her face, Judah recognized her as being a harlot. And so he actually asked her to, as far as to have intercourse with him. And of course she said, "Well, I will, but, what will you give me for that?" And he said, "Well, I'll give you a kid out of our goats." And she said, "Well, I'm going to need some form of down payment." And so what Judah did is he gave the signet of his ring and also his staff, and let's see, it was one other thing that she gave to him, and I'll find it here in just a minute: signet, thy bracelet, and thy staff. And so she received those, and he said, "Listen, when I come back to town, I'll bring the kid goat." And so he sent the kid goat back with his Adullamite friend to find her, and nobody could find her anywhere. And as a matter of fact, they said there's no harlot that's in this part. You must be mistaken. So about 3 months later, the news comes to Judah that Tamar is pregnant, and that she's played the part of a harlot. Well, of course, since her face was covered, Judah didn't know that he had gone into Tamar. And so he says, "Listen, bring her here because she's going to be burnt." we're gonna kill her as the law demands for her actions. And so she sends, Tamar sends to Judah those three items which he had given in pledge for the kid goat. And with them, she asks a question. She says, I'm pregnant with the articles to whom these three things belong. And of course, Judah recognized, of course, they were his. And so he says, hey, I've committed the greater sin by not following through on my commitment with my third son to become your husband. And so he didn't go through with killing her. So it came to pass that she had twins, right? And so when it came time to give birth, when the first one came out, or he stuck his hand out, that they tied a scarlet string on his finger so that they would know he was the firstborn. It was very important to keep track of that. However, what happened is that he didn't follow through from coming down the birth canal, but his brother did. So it was actually the other one was the firstborn, and the firstborn was Pharez, and the secondborn was Zara, Zarah, Pharez and Zara. Now, what is important here to understand, a couple of things I'm going to bring out, is that Pharez was, of course, the son of Judah, and actually was in the line of both Mary and Joseph, in the line of Jesus. And of course, Jesus is in the line of Judah, and so Jesus was born through this. And so, throughout the scripture we find where, David and Bathsheba, and in this case Tamar, the daughter-in-law who deceived Judah and had a child, that the bloodline of Christ, you and I might think, well, that would be something that God would set up perfect, but you see so many instances to where there were things there that bring about God's perfect will in that, and it wasn't always as we might expect it. And certainly this was unexpected, but anyway, he was one of the descendants of Joseph. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the scarlet thread, because it says that, and I guess that was a custom that they would do that to ensure that, again, that they could keep track of which one of the children after they were born was actually the firstborn, in case there was a mix-up of any kind. But talking about the scarlet thread, there's there's been quite a few sermons, and I think there's one that's pretty well known by what is his? Is it A.W. Criswell? I believe it is. But anyway, First Baptist. He was pastor at First Baptist Church in Dallas for a long time, and really what it entails is the redemption by blood, the blood redemption that is seen throughout Scripture, that starts in the book of Genesis here, and goes throughout Scripture, and it's called the scarlet thread. And one of the first places that I believe that it teaches in Scripture about that is, as you know, that when Adam and Eve disobeyed God, Eve was deceived, Adam disobeyed, that they covered themselves with fig leaves. They tried to cover up their own sin, but God made coats of skin for them. And the implication of that is that in order to make coats of skin, then it required killing an animal, which killing the animal is there was blood shed, and that blood was shed for the sin of Adam and Eve, and God covered them with the coats of skin. And so that goes throughout Scripture, and in many places, and you might be familiar with Rahab and the book of Joshua, and of course she helped the spies of Israel when they were coming through to Canaan, and she tied a scarlet thread where it was visible to those that came through, and they were killing everybody else there, but she was redeemed through the scarlet thread, and her and her family. And so that's kind of the idea here. But in this case, I was looking at that and I was thought, well, wait a minute, shouldn't the scarlet thread have been on Ferris? But not really, because Zerah, who had the scarlet thread, think about it, he was actually redeemed through his brother Pharez. And so it really did belong on him. It's a scarlet thread that through the descendants of Pharez, which the seed of Pharez, would be Christ. And so his brother Zerah was actually redeemed through the descendant, the seed of Pharez. And so that's pretty cool how all that works together. And that is Genesis 38. So we're going through here and we're hearing all about Jacob, and then we hear suddenly about Joseph last week, and then this week we learn about one of the other 12 sons. This being Judah, and of course the significance of that is the seed or the bloodline of Christ. So anyway, that's all I have for this week's scripture and this week's study. And I hope that you enjoy it. And I always love hearing your comments. And I hope that you enjoy it. And we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining.